Hello, book lovers, and welcome to Authors Love Bookstores with a Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Joe Moldover, author of the novel Every Moment After, and I am so happy to be here with you today for the 74th episode of our show. Today, we are joining author Tracey Lange, author of best-selling We Are the Brennans, and Julie Swearington of Roundabout Books in Bend, Oregon. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
For those who might not be familiar, Tracey is an author who was born in the Bronx and raised in Manhattan. She graduated from the University of New Mexico before owning and operating a behavioral health company with her husband for 15 years. While writing her debut novel, We Are the Brennans, Tracey completed the Stanford University online novel writing program, and she currently lives in Bend, Oregon with her husband, her two sons, and her German Shepherd. We Are the Brennans is her debut novel. It is a bestseller. Congratulations on that. Writing in the New York Times, Liz Moore says it is a confident published debut that casts off traditional notions about morality. And I agree. Tracey, it's great to be here, and congratulations on all the success of this book.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We are here today to support Roundabout Books. The mission of our show is to travel across North America, metaphorically speaking, and support independent booksellers and the communities around them. Tracey, we're with Roundabout Books because you selected them as your beloved local indie. And I wonder if you would tell us a little bit about what makes Roundabout Books so special, what you love about them, any particular great experiences you've had there. For those of us who can't be in Bend, paint us a picture.
I would talk about a few things. Well, I guess first and foremost, to me, it's just kind of everything you want in your local bookstore. To me, they have a fantastic location. We're sort of known in this part of Bend for our many roundabouts, and they are right off a pretty central roundabout in a super cute neighborhood that's just wonderful to walk around. So it's a great place to go to grab a coffee or a drink and just browse and chat. Great selection of books, and if they don't have what you're looking for, they'll get it for you quickly. They were also kind of right across the street from the schools my boys attended, which was a nice bonus. But another thing I would talk about is I've just been so grateful for their efforts to engage in the community, especially, of course, over the last year and a half, which has been hard for everybody. But they put out, in particular, a monthly newsletter that is just chock full of information about upcoming books, new writers, events at the store, or obviously a lot of them have been virtual lately. But they host a number of book clubs, kids events. I just think it's been so nice to see that effort to really keep people excited about books, especially over the last year and a half again. And when we did go in those lockdown periods, they offered the curbside service. And so personally, that was something I really appreciated, was just seeing that continued effort in a rough time to reach out to everybody. And of course, I'll always have a special place in my heart because it was the first place I got to go and actually see my book on a shelf, and which was super exciting. And they were kind enough to host an author event that night for me with Julie. So yeah, that's it kind of in a nutshell, but those are the highlights. That's why I wanted to feature Roundabout.
I love it. It's an unforgettable moment seeing your book in the bookstore for the first time.
It really was, especially when everything's virtual. It was really nice to go in there and see it.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Julie, your role at Roundabout is as events manager. And you've been at Roundabout for about 3 years, but you have a longer history as a bookseller. One of the things I know I miss about being able to go into indie bookstores all the time are the events, the live events, and the experience of those events, the ways in which they can be unpredictable, the ways in which they can be really funny, the ways in which they can just be kind of strange sometimes. It's just a great scene. And I wonder if there's anything that sticks in your mind as a live event that was especially something, especially surprising, especially strange, especially moving? Is there something that that you think of when you think about live events?
So I'm still that person that is just in awe of authors, because having read their books, when I see what's on the paper and I'm like, how did that come out of your brain? When I meet them, I get very starstruck, and I get my book signed, and I'm excited to ask them a question, the same as the rest of the audience. I will say we've had really great events. I had only been the event manager for 9 months before the lockdowns. So that was a fun change. And we had an amazing event that February with Anna Weiner for Uncanny Valley, which is a big memoir. It just so happened that her aunt lived in Bend, and her aunt was like, "You're going to come to Roundabout and do an event." And we were like, "Okay, thank you." And so that was standing room only. We have a famous local author named Jane Kirkpatrick, who has published 40 some books, and she is always standing room only, and she is just an amazing speaker. You learn something at every single one of her events. And then right before the lockdown, and I actually wasn't in the store for this, we had the booksellers and the owners' husbands actually took over the store for a weekend for us, and we went out of town for a big to do. And we had an event for it's a publisher that's part of Portland State University, and the book was about the elephant keeper at the Oregon State Zoo, who has since retired, and he is quite elderly. And the author flew in from the East Coast. They had this event, again, standing room only, for a book about this man's life, about being an elephant keeper. I mean, how else would you find out about what it's like to be an elephant keeper unless you come to an event and then you take the book home and you're just even more excited to read it? Like when you've heard the author maybe read a part of it, and so now you hear their voice in your head as you're reading their characters. Yeah, book events, they just they're just one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
I mean, and I do miss them being in the store. We've had 3 since September. And Zoom has been amazing. And we've chatted with authors who were in Italy and Australia and Canada. But there is nothing that compares to a live event.
Yeah. No, it's just great energy. Tracey, I'm going to come to you with a question, but first I just want to remind our audience, the people out there watching now and the people in future time watching the video, that the show exists to support independent booksellers across the U.S. during what continues to be a very difficult time. So if you look in the chat, you will see the link to Roundabout Books. It is there so that you will go and buy books. Buy a copy of We Are the Brennans. I have my copy here. Go get your copy. If you already have one, go get a second one. It is a great gift for the holidays. Pick up other books, but buy some books. Okay, Tracey,
Yes.
to you. We Are the Brennans came out in August 2021. So sort of working backwards, I am assuming this was very much a pandemic publication. If you look back to when this book was completed, when this book sold, I'm imagining that your process really tracked alongside COVID. And one thing that we always talk about with authors is how do you maintain engagement? How do you maintain momentum? How do you maintain your creativity at a time when you're not able to go out and go into stores and interact with other authors the same way? What has it been like for you, and how have you been able to navigate it so successfully?
Well, so kind of two answers there. As far as Brennan's goes, really, I sold it in May of 2020. So it was, early on in the pandemic. And I guess it was a really bright spot in a very dark time. Um, but most of the writing had been done by then.
Mhm.
But I certainly was hard at work at my next one. And for me, it was kind of a savior during that time, having another project to work on. I know other people that really, just due to stress level, maybe didn't get much writing done those months or for many months. It affected people in different ways. For me, it was kind of a good escape, I guess. But one thing that absolutely helped me through is my writers group, because what we do is so solitary. They help me anyway. But particularly during that time, just to have that connection and continued accountability and encouragement. So they were very important. And as far as publishing at a time when I couldn't get out and do any events, it was definitely a kind of a bummer. I didn't have anything to compare it to, but like Julie said, it has been wonderful in the sense that I've managed to do book clubs and meet bookstore owners and do events kind of all over the country. But I will say, for the first time, I did a live event last week. It was a local book club here with 15 to 20 women. And so it was the first time doing something live like that. And there was an energy for sure, and that you get in that live room with everybody talking about your book that is hard to duplicate on Zoom. Zoom's fantastic, but it was really a neat experience to actually sit in a room and see these women sort of debate certain issues and talk about the different characters and their thoughts on everything. So I'm grateful for Zoom. I'd be happy to do more live events as we're able to. I think we're getting there, hopefully. Like Julie, it sounds like you guys are making it happen. So hopefully soon. But yeah, it was kind of a strange time, and I had a lot of people tell me that it was kind of a bummer I wasn't going to be able to get out there. People that have been through it before. So I've just tried to enjoy every minute. Love it.
Absolutely. And big plug for writers group and the importance of writers groups.
Yes.
Julie, apart from sort of the process of writing the book, we always, like to talk about the commercial side, the sales side of the process. We Are the Brennans is a New York Times bestseller, which is as a debut novel, which is fabulous. Solve the riddle of literary success for us. Why do in 5 sentences or less, but why it is a perpetual mystery. Why do some books just somehow catch the public imagination, become tremendously commercially successful, generate buzz, and then other books that are quite good may not? I mean, do you have any insight into it? And I'll just tag a follow-up to that huge question, which is, can you as the bookseller control it, or are you just sort of along for the ride?
Gosh, I actually studied marketing and sales in my graduate program for book publishing, and I could not answer that question. What I will say is this: if you get the right book into the right agent's hand, you've solved, I would say, half of that equation. Really, because that agent, that publicist, I know Tracey knows this, her publicists are great. That is their job. They tell booksellers like me when they think this is the next great book. Well, then they give me a free copy of it. I read it. I pass it along to the other people in the bookstore. Maybe we keep track of it and see other articles that are coming out. I will say that booksellers have a lot to do with finding the not New York Times bestsellers. And I know that at Roundabout, more so than other bookstores, I worked in more corporate bookstores before, the booksellers take a real pride in reading those unknown books so they can recommend it. So that if someone says, hey, I already read Tracey's book and I really liked it, I want something similar. Well, then we know to say, oh, there's this book you've probably never heard of. and we're going to hand it to them. Now, we probably have no real impact on thousands of sales when it comes to something like that with that book. But what we are supposed to do is get that one person to like that book who will hopefully then go tell a friend about it, post about it on social media, review it on Goodreads, tell their book club they should read it. I think booksellers they're the hidden gem in that sales world, but I do think that so many publishers, agents, publicists, they know this and they value. I was just at PNBA, which is the Pacific Northwest Bookseller Association conference, and they know that they can't sell a book without us. That's not to say, again, that that's going to make a book a New York Times bestseller. I mean, that is, if someone can solve that, they've solved the mystery of all mysteries when it comes to book sales.
Absolutely. Tracey, when do you know that your book was going to be big? I mean, to paint that picture for us? Did you get a call from your agent saying, guess what, it's the New York Times bestseller? Was it a slow burn? Was it a surprise? How did that go down?
It was definitely a surprise. I knew that my publisher was doing such a great job at, like Julie said, they get out there and create so much buzz and get all those advanced copies out. And so I knew that was happening. And a really big move that helped me was when Book of the Month chose it as one of their monthly suggestions. That helped a lot. But I don't think anyone really expects the New York Times bestseller. And I actually was home here in my office and I got an email from my publishing team saying, hey, can you get on an urgent phone call? And of course, my mind went to, something's wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know what it would be. So anyway, we jumped on and that's when they let me know that it had hit the list and they were tremendously excited. So it was a wonderful moment. But yeah, nobody sees that one coming. So it didn't really feel real. Still at times I kind of like, really? I don't, but that's how I found out. So,
that's fabulous. Yeah. That's fabulous. We can all experience that vicariously through you. To the audience, remember to put questions and comments in the chat. We are here talking about We Are the Brennans by Tracey Lange, who is with us along with Julie Swearington from Roundabout Books, where you should go in person if you can, or online to pick up a copy and to pick up a bunch of other books too, because supply chain issues are real, and now is the time to be doing your holiday shopping right now. Tracey, I'm always very interested in authors' day jobs. The authors that we have here on the program are sometimes full-time authors, but are oftentimes doing all kinds of interesting things to to make ends meet while they're writing. You have a background in behavioral health. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, I for many years I worked in the behavioral healthcare field, which entailed working with children, adolescents, adults, families dealing with all sorts of struggles, diagnoses, various issues. And so I've always been intrigued by family. Certainly all of that work experience probably feeds what I'm writing about to some degree. And I did an awful lot of writing in that role as well. Some of it was sort of contract legalese type writing, but then I did for many years write assessments for our clients, which is essentially telling their story. So I feel like that work, although it certainly wasn't creative writing, it sort of helped probably keep my skills somewhat sharp, my writing skills. But I was able to leave that business about 7 years ago now and kind of jump into writing full time. That's when I decided it was kind of my opportunity to try to really write a novel. And I just immersed myself in it, and I took some refresher classes, and then I found the Stanford program, and I really treated it like a full-time job. Honestly, I just dove in, and so that's what I've been focusing on the last several years. And Brennan's took a little over 2 years, probably close to 2.5 years to complete. you know, and that includes many, many drafts, of course. And it also includes a couple of steps back from the manuscript at times when I was just very in the weeds and needed to sort of step back and come back at it with fresh eyes. But that's the work I did before. And it was really being able to let go of that that gave me the opportunity to jump into this wholeheartedly.
I love it. That's great. I'm a clinical psychologist in my day job, and I always say that psych evals in a lot of ways are like writing short stories and are sort of great training for writing fiction.
It's true. I think that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Julie, Tracey is talking about writing as a full-time job. We're sort of all talking about the critical importance of booksellers in promoting books, in bringing books to the public's attention. Part of an author's full-time job, I think, especially today, when many publishing houses have limited resources for marketing and publicity, is to go out and make contact with booksellers and bookstores and network and create those relationships. I am sure that your inbox is full of authors who are trying to get your attention and trying to connect with you and trying to get publicity through Roundabout Books. I wonder if you can offer any tips to the authors and aspiring authors in our audience about that, things not to do, which is always an interesting conversation when it comes to this topic, things that are effective. You know, what can you tell us?
Yeah, actually, gosh, I wrote a blog post for a friend's website on this exact thing. There's a couple things. One, you really need to know the bookstore that you're pitching to. And that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to have been inside their store. If you're not local, but you think your book applies to something in their local area, especially if it's nonfiction, it's sporting, outdoors, some sort of travel guide, go for it. Pitch that book. And right now with virtual, talk to them about a virtual event. If your book is a more, fiction, everybody could read it. What you need to understand is the size of that store. That's sometimes hard to tell, but if you really go and look at their website, their about me, anything like that, the history of the bookstore. For example, Roundabout is 1,500 square feet. That's not very big. I mean, we are the size of my house. We get pitched a lot of books that for no other reason than we simply do not have the space on our shelves. I have to turn them down. But what I want people to understand is I have looked at your book on some of our internal, platforms. I've maybe looked at it online to see what the reviews are like, what people are saying about the book. How can I help you position this book so that I can sell it? Because if I put your book on my shelf, I need to tell my booksellers why this book will sell, who would be looking for this book. Again, it reminds me of this author if someone's asking for it. If there's not that link, I can't sell your book. I cannot give you the real estate on my shelf. And it breaks my heart every single time I have to tell someone, thank you, but no thank you. And it does not mean don't pitch me again in 6 months. You wrote a different book. Go ahead, email me again. We also do consignment, which I know a lot of small stores do. Some don't. We have guidelines. The thing is that you need to come in with the knowledge of what I'm looking for. And that's always on our website so that I know you've done your homework. On a cold pitch where I can tell it's a form letter, it's not personalized, it really doesn't meet a lot of our sweet spots, you haven't done your homework either. Authors do their homework to write these books. You got to do your homework when it comes to marketing and publicity. You have to do it.
Such great feedback. That's such great advice. Do your homework.
I would add really quickly that it's the same when you're at that point where you'd like to try to find an agent to work with. They'll tell you the same thing. Why are you coming to me, or why are you approaching me personally? And if it's just a form letter or the same thing you're saying to everybody else, it's not going to get you anywhere.
It's not going to get
So,
you anywhere.
yeah.
Yeah. You know, they say that when you've written the book, the work has just begun, and you think it's not true, but it is. I want to ask you guys about genre. Julie, before we went on air, we were just sort of chatting in the green room about genre. We were talking young adult, new adult, things like that. I think genre is so interesting in the book selling and in book writing. So, Julie, I'm going to come to you first, and then to Tracey. Julie, if I come into your store and I have not heard of this book, because oddly I don't watch Authors Love Bookstores or read the New York Times, and I pick this up and I say, what is this? Is this a mystery? Is this suspense? Is this rom-com? How would you place it for me?
So I would probably put it in what is sometimes considered a pretty big genre, but it's adult literary fiction. Mm-hmm. And that can be something that is kind of unusual, mind-bending. It's a writing style you've never seen before. It doesn't necessarily have to have. It doesn't have like a happy ending where everything's sewn up into a tight little, neat box. Maybe there's a mystery, but it's the mystery of why families are the way they are, speaking directly to Tracey's book, why people are the way they are. Literary fiction, I think to a lot of people, and I used to be one of them, is a scary genre because we think of these really hefty books and you think of things like Faulkner or somebody where you're like, I'm going to rip my hair out before I finish this. But I have seen so many great books that fit the literary fiction because they don't fit anything else. They're so one of a kind. And those are amazing books. And that, I would say adult literary fiction.
Yeah, I think that's a great description of what literary fiction is. So Tracey, sort of follow-up question for you about that. In terms of how you have related to genre as a writer, first, in your earlier days, were you genre curious? Are there Tracey Lange horror novels and mysteries and YA novels in a drawer somewhere? And secondly, do you think of yourself as writing to genre? Do you sort of think of yourself as like, okay, I am going to write adult literary fiction. That means that there are these things I must do. There are these things I cannot do. I don't get to have ghosts, but I do get to have sex scenes or whatever. Like, how do you think about it?
Well, first of all, to your first question, I can't say I do have a couple novels in like virtual drawers that may or may not see the light of day at some point, but they're really similar to in sort of tone, I guess, to Brennan's. Different stories, but no outliers as far as like YA or total thriller. Or I've kind of stuck with this general genre so far. And as far as how I think about it, when I was writing the book, I didn't really think about it very much. I just tried to build a story. Where I really started to think about it was when I was getting ready to try to take that next step and find an agent and get it out in the world, because you have to be able to describe it. And it's so interesting to hear Julie talk about it, because to this day, I still am not sure. Sometimes even locally, people will find out, oh, you wrote a book. What kind of book is it? And I'm like, oh man, and there are different answers for that, but different titles or labels mean different things to different people. So I generally will go with like, it's an adult literary fiction, or I've found, I think maybe contemporary fiction out there at times. Sometimes I'll just say, you know what, it's a big messy family drama. So it's hard to pin down, and people use the terms in different ways, but that was the first time I started to think about it, and I realized, does it fit literary? Because like Julie was saying, it for a long time, I think we all thought of those heavier really heavy, long books that take you for on these winding rides as more literary. But yet it certainly didn't fit kind of, any of the other standard genres. So, it hasn't been that long that I've really thought about where exactly does this fit in. So it's great to hear Julie's response.
Absolutely. Tracey, the audience wants to know, and you should feel free to take a pass on this if you want to, but they want to know what's coming up next.
Well, I'm kind of deep into the next one, and I've probably got one more good draft to do, and I would say it's in a similar genre, kind of diving into another messy, sort of dysfunctional family, but they've got a whole separate set of issues and fun stuff going on. So there's some similarities in terms of some of those relationships and looking at those and diving into all that, but really different dynamics and different setup.
Awesome.
So yeah.
We will look forward to that. Julie, I mentioned the now familiar phrase supply chain earlier. For the last couple of weeks, the booksellers that we've had on the program have been talking about that, sweating about that. Can you tell us a little bit about the situation at Roundabout?
Yeah, we have definitely front loaded and ordered in preparation for the possibility of either having some delivery issues in late November and throughout December, and also issues with shipping books to people, because we do have a lot of people that come in and buy them and we ship it directly to their friends and family. So one of the things I want to remind everyone is October is the new December. This is the American Bookseller Association's second year of reminding us that order early and you will get your book. The other thing is, if you go into your local independent bookstore and the book that you think you need is absolutely not available, I need you to trust them that they're going to find you the book that will answer that, even if it's not the exact book that you came in for. That is what a bookseller, and these are people that I work with who take their job very seriously. This is not, come in from some other industry. These are book lovers who will help you find your next best read and the next best gift to give to someone who either also loves books or maybe needs to learn to love books.
Oh yeah, that's great. October is the new December. So let's roll up our sleeves and sell some books. We're going to start with Julie because she's the professional, and then we'll come to Tracey. But and I want to remind the audience that this week there is only one place to be buying your books, which is Roundabout Books in Bend, Oregon. Link in the chat. Click on it. Buy books, including this one. Yes. Julie, what are you reading? What are you excited about? What's about to come out? What are people talking about?
So my book club this month actually read an older book called The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stifter. Many of you might know her from her Raven Boys cycle. I highly recommend pretty much any book that she's written. The Scorpio Races is a standalone, and it's been out for about 10 years, and rereading it, I fell in love with it all over again. And then a couple months ago, I read my first Neal Shusterman, which I'm sad to admit, this was my first. There will be more, but I read The Game Changer, and it was amazing. Just like, I almost don't have words for how much I enjoyed that book. It's fast paced. It tackles like some big issues, but in a way that feels very like you don't even realize we're talking about big things. It is YA, but it's so mature, and I really loved it.
Oh man, you're a great bookseller. Now I feel like I want to read. I definitely want to read those. That's fabulous. Tracey, what are you reading?
I'm actually about to finally start Cloud Cuckoo Land, which I loved all the light we cannot see. So I'm super excited to get to that. As far as what I just finished a couple days ago was Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaughey. And I loved the book. Anything that takes place in that part of the world usually captures my interest, Scotland, Ireland. And but it was, I felt like it was a great story, and I felt like I learned a ton about wolves and rewilding. And so really enjoyed that book. And then I'll mention one. I actually got to read an advanced copy of this one. It's not out yet. It'll be out next year. It's called The Truth About Ben and June by Alex Keister. And great book about modern day parenthood and the stresses on both sides of a marriage, and from both perspectives. I thought it was wonderful. So that'd be a good one to add to your list. Really well done. Yeah.
This is a jump ball question for either one of you who might want to take it on, but I mean, you're mentioning some great books. You're obviously both very intensive readers. Do either one of you find that you kind of need palate cleansers in between some of the really heavy things that you read, just whether it's, to go back to genre, whether it's reading in a different genre, whether it's reading nonfiction rather than fiction, whether it's reading People magazine? What are there things that you sort of just find you need to do to kind of reset for the next heavy lift?
I do read a fair amount of nonfiction. I actually just listened to Why Fish Don't Exist by Lulu Miller, which unfortunately turned out to be not very light. It actually does deal with some heavier topics, but my favorite thing is an audiobook to kind of do that, to kind of let someone else tell me the story and kind of give my eyes, because I work at a screen all day long anyway, a break. And I find that audiobooks, especially when they do different voices for the characters, is just more fun. It's like watching a play. It's like listening to a play in your car. And so I use those as kind of that palate cleanser.
Love it.
Yeah, I would agree. I always have an audiobook going. I always have one I'm reading, and then I have an audiobook going. And I do like to switch it up, especially if I've read maybe a few heavier books. I'll pick up a good mystery or suspense of some sort, just to sort of shake it up a little bit. So yeah, but the audiobooks are a great way. And not everything, something like Cuckoo Land, I'd prefer to read rather than audio. I feel like that's a lot to pay attention to, for a long time on audiobooks. So I'm a little more selective about what I'll kind of listen to, but it is a great way to change it up.
That's great. Those are great recommendations. We are winding down on time. It is so wonderful to talk to the two of you. Thank you both so much for being here with us today. To the online audience, one more time, Roundabout Books link is in the chat. Go pick up books that look like this, and a bunch of other books for the holidays as well. Be back with us next week. We have our monthly YA panel. The week after that, we are sticking with YA with author Mackenzie Lee visiting with the King's English. And the week after that, I am joined by my partner and fellow author and producer, Kimberly Hensel-Lorance, for our holiday show, when we will be making our yearly recommendations, and this shall once again be discussed. So thank you for being with us. Tracey, thank you, and congratulations once more on the success of Brennan's. It's a great book. So happy that it's being noticed and received the way that it is. Julie, so happy that you're able to do some live events, and fingers crossed that the store continues to do well and that we can do more live events going forward, and that one of these days I can make it out to the West Coast and visit you guys in person. But thank you for being here. To the audience, thank you so much for being here as well. See you next week, and until then, stay healthy and keep reading. Thank you.
Thank you.